My wife secretly had an affair with my best friend, and when I found out she stole $200, $0 from our joint account to help him buy a house, now they're both suing me for half the property I built from nothing. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. The thing is, I had always trusted. We'd been together for 10 years, married for 7, and I thought I knew her inside and out. But that trust shattered one night when I stumbled across something I wasn't meant to see, a series of texts on her phone that made my stomach turn. It started as a gut feeling, a faint suspicion I brushed aside because she was always so convincing when she lied. But this time, the evidence was undeniable. It all began a few weeks ago. Had been acting strangely, more irritable than usual, snapping at me over small things and avoiding intimacy. She'd make excuses, tired, stressed, busy with work. But something felt off. She also started staying late at work meetings, which I initially thought was just her trying to get ahead or work on some big project. Little did I know, those meetings were something else entirely. One night I decided to check her phone because I'd noticed her deleting messages and clearing her browsing history more than once. I'm not proud of it, but I was desperate to understand what was going on. When I unlocked her phone, I found a message thread with my best friend Jake. At first, I thought it might be innocent, some kind of work-related chat. But then I saw the way they were talking, flirty, suggestive, full of inside jokes that clearly hinted at something more. What hit me hardest was the last message she sent. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I've missed you so much." It was sent just a few hours before she told me she was working late. I felt my blood go cold. My mind spun. How long had this been going on? Was I just blind to it all? The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was also deeply personal because Jake was supposed to be my best friend. I confronted her the next morning. I was furious, hurt, and confused all at once. I threw the phone in her face and demanded an explanation. Her eyes widened and she immediately started to lie. She told me it was just a mistake, that she and Jake had been talking, but nothing serious. She insisted they never crossed the line, that it was just sexless flirting and that I was overreacting. She called me paranoid, said I was jealous, and that I was ruining everything over nothing. But I knew better. I knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes, the way she avoided my gaze, the way her voice trembled when she tried to deny it. And then she threw in the classic line, "You're just insecure, and I'm tired of pretending everything's perfect when it's not." That's when I started to realize how deep this was. Had been lying for months, hiding something that could destroy everything we'd built. The emotional impact hit me like a punch in the gut. I was angry at her, yes, but mostly I was devastated. I had trusted her with my life, and she'd been sneaking around behind my back. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and honestly, I didn't know how to process what I just learned. How could someone I loved so much do this to me? I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind or just stupid for trusting her so blindly. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the moments I'd uncovered, imagining her and Jake together, sharing secrets, lying to me. I started thinking about the money, our joint account, the savings I worked so hard to build, the house we bought together. Turns out she'd already spent some of that money on Jake. I found out later she stole around $200, $0 from our account to help him buy a house. She told me she was helping a friend, but I knew better. That money was supposed to go toward our future, our children's college fund, renovations I'd been planning for years. All this was just the beginning. The shock was only the start. I felt like I was living someone else's nightmare, one I couldn't wake up from. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all of this? How did I not see the signs? I trusted her, I fought for her, and now I was left standing in the ruins of what I thought was a happy marriage. The betrayal was so deep, I wondered if I'd ever recover from it. But I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't going to end quietly. I was already planning what came next. After I found out about the affair and the money, everything changed. I couldn't look at the same way anymore. Her lies, her sneers when I confronted her, it all made me realize I'd been played. The worst part, she kept insisting she was the victim, that I was overreacting, that she loved me but was just confused or stressed out. She even had the nerve to say she was doing this for us, that Jake was just a temporary distraction and that she'd never really meant to hurt me. Yeah, right. I didn't believe her for a second. I knew she was full of it. The first thing I did was dig into our bank accounts more thoroughly. I needed to see exactly how much she'd taken, what she'd spent it on, and if she was planning to keep up the lie. That's when I discovered the house she was helping Jake buy. It was a big, fancy place, way outside his means, and definitely not something I'd ever agree to if I'd known the truth. She used the stolen $200, $0 to help him put down a deposit, and I had no idea she'd even been planning that behind my back. That was the point I knew I had to act. I couldn't just sit around and let her keep lying, especially when she'd stolen from us. I started making plans. I contacted a lawyer, figuring I'd need to protect what I'd built. I also decided to track her movements, her phone, her emails, whatever it took to get the full picture. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how to get her to admit everything, how to make her pay for what she'd done. Meanwhile, kept up her act. She'd cry, say she was sorry, and then turn around and accuse me of destroying our marriage over some stupid mistake. She called me paranoid and accused me of spying, which I was, but she deserved it. I knew she was lying about everything, about her innocent affair, about the money she stole, about her helping Jake. She spun stories that made me sick. Her behavior was bitchy, dismissive. She'd swear she was the victim and that I was overreacting. She even started to gaslight me, saying I was crazy for suspecting her. The emotional toll hit me hard. I was furious, but I also felt incredibly hurt. I'd given her everything, my love, my trust, my life, and she'd thrown it all away for some guy who was just a friend to her, or so she claimed. The betrayal cut deep and I started to question everything. How could I have been so blind? Had I missed all the signs? Was I just a fool for believing in her? The worst part was that I still loved her, even after everything, but that love was slowly turning into bitterness. I also started thinking about the future. If I was going to do something about this, it had to be big. I wasn't just going to let her walk away with her stolen money and her lies. I was going to fight. I hired a lawyer, prepared for a fight over the house and the money. I knew she'd try to take half of everything. She always was greedy, especially when it came to money. She'd always been bitchy about my spending, but now she was the one who'd stolen from us. I felt like I was fighting for my life, for the very thing I'd spent years building. At the same time, I was trying to process my feelings. I was angry, yes, but also deeply sad. I kept asking myself how I'd let it get this far, how I'd missed the signs, how I'd trusted her so blindly. I'd always been the supportive husband, the one who worked hard and tried to keep everything smooth. And now I was left with a mess I didn't know how to fix. I was angry at her for dismissing me as paranoid, angry at myself for not seeing the truth sooner, angry at Jake for betraying me and helping her lie. But most of all, I felt betrayed by the woman I'd loved for so long. My plan was clear. I was going to fight for what was mine, for the house I'd helped build from nothing and for the money she'd stolen. I knew she'd try to take half, but I wasn't going to give her an easy victory. I started gathering evidence, preparing for court, and figuring out how to expose her lies. I wasn't just angry, I was determined. I knew this was going to get ugly, but I was ready for it. Whatever it took, I was going to make her pay for what she did. The more I dug into the financial mess left behind, the more I realized how deep her deception went. It wasn't just about the affair or the stolen money. It was about the betrayal of everything we'd built together. I found hidden accounts, secret transfers, and even some shell companies she set up to hide her tracks. The $200, $0 she took wasn't just a random amount. It was a calculated move to help Jake buy that damn house. And she'd done it all without telling me, as if I was supposed to be clueless. I remember the day I finally sat down with my lawyer, David. We went over the evidence, the bank statements, the texts, everything. He told me actions could be considered fraud, theft, even conspiracy. That was a blow I hadn't expected. I'd always thought of her as the woman I married, not some criminal mastermind. But the truth was staring me in the face. She lied, stolen, and betrayed me on a level I never thought possible. While I was dealing with all this legal stuff, kept up her act. She was bitchy, dismissive, and constantly trying to gaslight me. She'd call me paranoid, accuse me of spying, and say I was just jealous. She'd cry about how much she loved me and how she'd never do anything to hurt us. But her tears didn't move me anymore. I saw right through her. I knew she was lying, and I knew she was planning her next move. One day, she even had the audacity to tell me that her affair with Jake was just sex, that it meant nothing, and that I was overreacting because I couldn't handle her being happy. That was the moment I realized she had no remorse. She was trying to rewrite history, make me doubt myself. But I knew better. I knew that her happiness had come at my expense, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The emotional was relentless. I felt anger, betrayal, and deep sadness all at once. I'd spent years trying to build a life with her, and now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd thrown everything away for a quick thrill and some quick cash. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind. How did I miss all the signs? Was I just too trusting, too naive? It hurt to admit that I'd loved her so much, only to find out she'd been lying to my face. Despite everything, I decided I wasn't going to be the one to fold. I prepared to fight for my rights. I filed for divorce, and I made it clear I wanted full custody of our kids if we had any. The house was mine, or at least I was determined to get what I deserved. Reaction. She was furious. She started throwing accusations, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that I was just jealous of Jake, that I was a terrible husband. But I didn't care anymore. Her words didn't matter. All that mattered was that I was finally taking control of my life. I also started talking to other people, friends, family, anyone who would listen. I needed support, and I needed to hear that I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. The betrayal cut so deep that I didn't know if I'd ever fully recover. But I knew one thing. I was done being the victim. I was going to fight for what was mine, for the truth, and for my own sanity. In the process, I realized how much this whole experience had changed me. I used to believe in honesty, in loyalty. Now I see that some people are just capable of destroying everything for their own selfish reasons. I learned to be cautious, to trust my instincts, and to never let anyone take advantage of me again. But most of all, I learned that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your life after someone tries to destroy it. And I was ready. For that, the legal battle was a nightmare, and Jake started suing me for half the property, claiming they were entitled to it because I abused her and because they'd invested in our house. At least that's what spun in her latest lies. She told everyone I was a controlling, jealous husband who didn't want her to be happy, and somehow she convinced a few people that I was the bad guy. But I knew better. I knew the truth was in the documents, in the bank statements, in the fact that I built everything from scratch. The court hearings were intense. Showed up with her bitchy attitude, trying to look innocent while throwing accusations left and right. She'd say I was an oppressive husband who controlled her every move, that I was just jealous of Jake, that the whole affair was just a misunderstanding. She even claimed that I had abused her emotionally, which was a lie. I kept my cool, but inside I was boiling. I had all the evidence to prove she lied about everything, but I also knew that courts can be unpredictable. Jake, on his part, was just as manipulative. He was just a friend, that nothing inappropriate ever happened, but I had the texts, the time-stamped messages, and the witnesses who saw her sneaking around. I had everything. I hired a private investigator who confirms visits to Jake's place, her secret phone calls, and her plan to help him buy that house with stolen money. That was the proof I needed to fight back. Meanwhile, kept up her bitchy, dismissive attitude. She'd call me names, accuse me of ruining her life, and say that I was just jealous because she found happiness with Jake. She'd scream during court sessions, trying to make me look like the villain. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate the system. I had lawyers, evidence, and a plan. I was determined to get full custody of the house and ensure she wouldn't get a dime of my hard-earned money. The emotional toll was terrible. Every hearing felt like a punch to the gut. I'd sit there hearing her lie, watching her smirk when she thought she was winning. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I couldn't believe I'd trusted her for so long, only to find out she'd been plotting behind my back. And Jake, my supposed best friend, was just as bad. I kept replaying the moments where I'd considered him a brother, and now I saw him for what he really was, a traitor. I also started to realize how much I'd sacrificed for her. I worked my ass off to build that house, to create a life. And she had just taken everything with Jake's help, and then had the nerve to sue me for half. I felt rage like never before. I was ready to fight to the end, not just for the house but for my dignity. I refused to be the victim anymore. Every day I'd wake up with a new resolve to take back what was mine and to make sure she paid for her lies. The worst part, I could see how much she enjoyed the chaos. She thrived on the drama, the attention, the power she wielded by tearing everything apart. Her attitude was bitchy, dismissive, and cruel, like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. She'd say things like, "You're just jealous I found happiness," or "You'll never control me again." That kind of arrogance made me realize she'd become someone I didn't even recognize, but I refused to let her win. I knew this was just the beginning, and I was ready for the final fight. In the midst of all this, I realized how much I'd changed. I used to be naive, trusting her blindly. Now I saw the world differently. I learned that some people are capable of destroying everything you care about for their own selfish reasons. I learned to stand my ground, to fight for myself, and to never let anyone manipulate me again. The betrayal had broken me in ways I didn't expect, but it also gave me clarity. I knew I had to be strong, not just for me but for anyone who's ever been betrayed like I was. And I was just getting started. The court battles dragged on for months, each hearing more exhausting than the last. And Jake were relentless, trying to spin the story that I was a monster who had somehow ruined her life. They claimed I was controlling, jealous, and emotionally abusive, classic tactics to sway the court's opinion. His bitchy attitude never waned. She was dismissive, condescending, and often outright rude to everyone involved. She'd roll her eyes when the judge asked questions, and her smirks made me want to punch her. But I kept my composure, knowing that the truth was on my side. I had hired some of the best attorneys I could find, and I made sure every piece of evidence was airtight. The texts, the bank statements, the witness statements, all of it painted a clear picture. Lies were starting to crumble under the weight of reality. I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger that she'd betrayed me, and relief that I was finally fighting back and not just taking her bullshit. Every day I'd wake up knowing I was one step closer to reclaiming what was mine, even if it meant enduring her bitchy attitude and her constant attempts to manipulate the situation. Meanwhile, his attitude grew nastier. She'd make snide comments, accuse me of trying to control her, and call me paranoid when I brought up the evidence of her affair and stealing. She'd say I was just jealous of Jake, that I was insecure, and that I was trying to ruin her life because I couldn't handle the truth. That was her favorite line. "You're just insecure." But I knew better. I knew she was the insecure one, hiding her lies behind that bitchy facade. The most shocking part was how family and friends started taking her side, even though everyone knew she'd been lying. She'd tell her parents I was an abusive husband, that I was trying to keep her from her happiness. I could see the damage her words were doing, but I refused to back down. I was fighting for my house, my money, and my reputation. I had nothing to hide, and I knew the truth would come out in court. The emotional toll was intense. I felt betrayed every time I saw her smirk or heard her dismiss my concerns. Every court session felt like a battle for my soul. I'd sit there, listening to her spin her lies, and wonder how I'd ever trusted her. The pain of her betrayal was compounded by the fact that she was trying to turn everyone against me, but I refused to let her win that way. I kept pushing forward, gathering more evidence, preparing for the final showdown. One day, I finally sat down with my lawyer, and we laid out our strategy. We knew we'd try to claim half the house, and she'd try to argue that her affair and theft were somehow irrelevant. But I had everything documented. I had proof of her stealing the money, proof of her affair, proof that she'd lied to everyone. I was ready to take her to court and show the judge the truth. I realized that this fight wasn't just about money or the house, it was about justice. It was about making sure she couldn't get away with it. The more I fought, the more I understood how much this experience had changed me. I used to be naive, trusting everyone. Now I saw that some people were capable of destroying everything for their own selfish reasons. I learned to stand my ground, to fight for what's right, and to never let someone manipulate me again. I also realized that revenge wasn't just about making her pay, it was about reclaiming my dignity and my life. And I was ready to do whatever it took to come out on top. The day I finally got the court's decision was one of the most relieving moments of my life, but also one of the most bitter. The judge ruled in my favor. I kept the house, the money I'd earned, and was ordered to pay back the stolen $200, $0 plus damages for the breach of trust. His face twisted with rage as she realized she'd lost, but her bitchy attitude didn't fade. She tried to spin it as unfair and a miscarriage of justice, but I knew better. I'd fought tooth and nail, and I'd won because I'd stayed honest, kept my composure, and refused to let her manipulate the court. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Moved out of the house, furious and bitter. She tried to drag me through more legal battles, but I was done. I had nothing left to prove to her. I knew she'd never admit her wrongdoings, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I had reclaimed my life, my house, my money, my dignity. I felt a strange sense of closure, even though the scars of betrayal still lingered. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned from all this. Trust is fragile, and sometimes people will betray you for their own selfish reasons, no matter how much you love or support them. His bitchy, dismissive attitude made everything worse, but it also pushed me to fight harder. I learned to stand up for myself, to protect what I built, and to never let anyone take advantage of me again. The experience changed my outlook on relationships and money, and I now see the importance of being cautious, of watching for the subtle signs that someone might be hiding something. Most importantly, I learned that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your life after someone tries to destroy it. I don't regret fighting for what was mine. I don't regret uncovering her lies or exposing her manipulations. That pain, that betrayal, it all taught me the value of self-respect and the importance of standing my ground. I may have lost a lot, but I gained something much more valuable: clarity, strength, and a new perspective on what it takes to survive betrayal. In the end, I'm grateful I fought back. I'm rebuilding now, slowly but surely. I've learned to trust again, but more carefully this time. And if there's one thing I want others to take from my story, it's this: never let someone's lies and betrayal define you. Stand up, fight for yourself, and never apologize for protecting what's yours. Because at the end of the day, your life is your own, and no one has the right to take it from you.